welcome to another episode of From a Mother to Another. And I am your host, Sandy Banerjee, and this is where you get to hear from moms around the world. Today, we have two awesome moms with us, and they have kids in middle and high school, and they are here to share their experiences with you. So join me in welcoming Deepika and Devi to this show.
Hi.
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, how are you guys doing?
good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming here. We appreciate your time and your responses. So let's get started with a round of introduction. Deepika, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Deepika Jain. I have two daughters, a 12 and a 17-year-old. So I have a seventh grader and a senior in high school looking at college applications at this time. We live in Philadelphia. We've been here for about 20 years. I'm a full-time working mom, single most of the time since my husband travels a lot, and these two girls. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Devi, how about you?
I have two kids. My name is Debbie Basu. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have two kids. One is 8-year-old son, and I have 16-year-old daughter. My husband lives with me. We are four, and we are in Pittsburgh for like maybe 12 years from now.
Awesome. Okay, great, great. Thank you. I can't wait to hear from both of you. So let's start with the burning question, and I think kind of hot question. It says, how do you handle teenagers? And this would be helpful for moms who are have budding teenagers, right? Like me, she's not even in a teen, but a tween, and it would help like if you can share any tips. And you guys have been there, right? So you have seen it yourself. So let's talk about teenagers and your tips to handle them. Devi?
Uh, from my side, I will say it's the age of revolting, right? So whatever you set the rule, you just abide by that. Like, do not budge or do not mend that your way to
Mm-hmm.
for your convenience or anything like that. For my daughter, I will say she's not much of a rebellion. Um, but kind of mood flinches are like terrible. So I
Uh,
try to avoid those times and talk to her in a better time.
right. That's good, good. Deepika, do you want to add anything from your experience?
So both my daughters have been different growing up. My older one is more stubborn, more assertive, and knows exactly what she wants, and she just has to get it. So for me, when she was a tween growing up, I would say nothing worked except telling her why that was a rule, why that rule was in place for her. So uh, reasoning in the sense that, let's say, what am I that expecting them to follow through, but why do I want her to follow through, and give her a reason that's outside of me wanting it. So forever curfew hours, why can't we go, do I have to be back home by a certain amount of time?
Right,
If I told her because I want you to be, or because that's the rule, it wouldn't happen. I,
right,
I had to tell her because I worry about you. I want you safe in my home, and I cannot sleep until you get home. That was the reasoning that would work with her.
right.
My younger one is 12 right now, going into that age, but she's totally different. Uh,
Uh,
she's more understanding, and for her, if I set a rule, it goes more easily. She doesn't really expect a reasoning, but I still give it to her because I gave it to her sister. But I would say with her, if I told her that you have to do something, she would just do it because she wants to please her mom. Um, so I would say your child's personality has a
mm-hmm.
lot uh,
Sure.
to play in that. And you're a mom, pick and go. You know your child the best. So do what you think is right and what would get it done.
Right.
Uh, in most cases, starting to treat them as individuals, as adults, semi-adults who understand
Right.
reason works. Is what I would say. So try that. If you're saying that do it because I want you to do it,
Right.
if that isn't getting you the results, then try to come up with some reasons why it
Mm-hmm.
should be done,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Sure.
should see a change there.
Right. Good point. Good point. So you talked about assertiveness, right? So how do you ensure that your kids are assertive? And I think this is a problem that some of the moms faced. And I got this question from one of the forums where they were really wanted to understand from moms of older kids, like how did you help or did you at all help them to become assertive? Or if they're not, then do you have any tips or any suggestions for making your kids assertive?
Um, as far as I'm concerned, I had to do that with both my daughters because,
Okay.
however assertive they are with me, they are not the same outside.
All
Again,
right.
that's the difference in personality, right? I mean, they go outside,
Mm-hmm.
they try to blend in and accept everything.
Right.
Um, so, what worked for me is making them responsible for their actions. Let them make their own. Start with letting them make their own decisions at
Mm-hmm.
home. Um, Whatever they're wearing, however they're going out. For example, my rule was we are in the northeast Philly, and
Right.
it gets cold. Northeast Pennsylvania, sorry. It gets really cold in winters. Starting about sixth grade, I told them, I'm not picking out clothes for you. Just make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you dress weather appropriate.
Right.
And they come down, they're dressed, and if you think it's not weather appropriate, my reaction would be go and change. This is going
Mm-hmm.
to be the temperature, it's snowing, go and change.
Right.
My younger one does it, so the 12-year-old listens to what I'm saying and will do it. The now 17-year-old would totally refuse to. She would be like, no, I'm going out in this. And I let her, because that's the way she tests the limits of she and then if she falls sick, she's made responsible for it.
Right.
Or if she's cold and shivering and blue when she comes back, well, you chose to dress like this
Right.
despite being given a direction. So once they know the actions and the consequences,
Right.
it teaches them to be, be a little more assertive about their likes and dislikes and wants and not.
Sure. Sure.
Um, One other incident that comes to my mind is my younger one. She actually dealt with something on her school bus. I have a little note here. Um, Yeah, so she was being bullied on her school
Oh.
bus, and
Wow.
she came back and she told me that. And I told her to retaliate. I said, well, you shouldn't be taking this from this boy. You stand up and tell him that
Sure.
he can't make you feel like this, and you can't be crying about it. She said, so she tried that. It didn't work. The next time the boy pushed her and she fell down.
Oh wow.
So we discussed scenarios. One of the options I gave her was, you push him back. Why do you take it?
Right.
And as a child, of course, she knows the rules in school. She knows that this is not acceptable
Not right.
behavior. So her reaction was, if I do that, you'll be mad at me. I will
Mm.
get suspended from school.
Right.
So my my stand in that was, I will not be mad at school. If
Mm.
you get suspended from school, that's fine with me, because at least you would have stood up for yourself.
Right.
We will go to the principal or the teacher and we'll explain the scenario and what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So just her knowing that her parents will support
Stand
her
up. Right. Yeah.
in the decision, that's what did it. And
Right.
she just needed that she won't get in trouble for being assertive with the
Right.
adults that she cares about.
Mm-hmm.
So, choose whichever way you want to go.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I think that's a very good point. And knowing that your parents would support you because you're doing the right thing, right?
Right,
Whatever mode you are. So that's important for kids, right?
right, right.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
because suspension was important to her. She's a
Sure.
good student. She didn't want to be suspended.
Right.
And me being happy with her, me not being mad at her was happy. So when
Hmm.
she's voicing those concerns, address those concerns
Right. Absolutely. Good point.
and stand behind them, I think.
Right, right, absolutely, yeah. Debbie, do you want to add your inputs regarding, being your kid, making your kids assertive? I know your older one; she is really a sweet kid, and I think that you have, like, you can share some of your experiences.
I mean, I mean, she's like, what do I say? Like she takes out on me, like if whatever she has to deal outside,
Mm-hmm.
she comes home and she so it started when she was a teenager. She was going all rebellious, moody, like she was going to talk back, and you know what, how the teenagers behave
Right.
like that. So it was a friction in the beginning. Then one day I read a Facebook post that told me that during this time they are dealing with so many things like hormonal changes, they have stuffs to do at school, they have peer pressure, they have lot things going on. It's not that they are like doing it intentionally. What we need to do is to support them, as Deepika said. So I changed my method and I became more close to her. I did not judge her for something not right, or like not dressing right, not eating right. I let her be for some time. Then I slowly input my ideas and what is right for her, what is wrong for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it became easier for me to deal with her.
Okay. Good, good. Good. So let's talk about cyber safety, right? That's a very important topic right now. A lot of moms are concerned. What did you do from your end to incorporate that in your household, Devi?
Mhm. So my point of view about that, like how I was brought up from when I was little or I was teenager, there was not much of a exposure to this internet
Sure.
and everything. But what my mom taught me is independence,
Hmm.
to face something and decide for himself or herself that it's good for you or not.
Right.
They know everything. Like they have cybersecurity classes in school. They know what is wrong, what is right. And I give her the freedom to choose what is wrong and what is right. I do not poke into her phones, or I do not snatch her phones because she did something wrong.
Right.
I do not reprimand her. But I do told her that this is not going to be okay with us,
Right.
or what is going to be the limit
Hmm.
of um I'm a bad mom in that sense because
What do you mean?
I let her do Snapchat and everything as long as I know she's not going to be in the wrong direction. I
See
keep a
that?
watch on
Yeah.
her.
So that means you are not a bad mom, really, because you said, like, as long as she is okay, right?
I
That's,
just keep a watch on her.
Yeah,
Everything.
that's your way of parenting, and that this is where this platform comes in. We discuss different moms, different opinions. There's no one size fits all, right? So
Right.
yeah, okay, good point. Deepika, how about you? How do you ensure cyber safety?
So like
With
Devi said, they are pretty aware. The kids of today, they are brought up in this world that is
sure.
so networked. In fact, my kids are more tech savvy than I am. I call
Mm-hmm.
them to connect me on. That being said, my rule has been that no social media until the end of middle school.
Okay.
Um, Neither, in fact, even my 17-year-old, she does not have a Facebook even now. She just got the Insta uh, last year when she was 16 because the girls were comparing prom dresses. So
Mhm.
I've kept them a little secluded like that.
Right.
um, that is what felt right to me. On the other hand, they do chat, like Devi said. They've had Snapchat at all times. My way of going about it is make them aware of what can happen on
Mm.
online with their online presence.
Mm-hmm.
I work in an environment where I'm actually able to bring back real life examples to them
Okay.
and explain, look, this is also something that can happen out of something
Right.
innocent. One example that comes to my mind is um, I was interviewing candidates to hire on my team.
Okay.
Um, and we really loved a candidate. She was a great student, did very well.
Mm-hmm.
We almost made her an offer. Right before the offer, as the HR was going through her background checks, her Facebook pops up. She did not have the right security levels. And we are
Right.
talking about a kid who's right out of college, first
Oh,
job,
okay.
right?
Gotcha.
First job. She did not have the right controls,
Mm-hmm.
the privacy settings, and she had posted pictures of wild partying in
Oh, okay.
college on Facebook. That was enough for us to not make our offer to
Okay.
her
Right.
because we work in a pharmaceutical environment. We are looking for, or at least we try to look for highly responsible
Sure.
candidates, and somehow that partying was worked against her. When I
Right.
brought that story back to my daughter, my lesson was, you may think you're safe. You may think that your Facebook access is only for your friends and
Mm-hmm.
family. But people who are aware, who are more tech savvy than you are,
Mm-hmm.
can actually pull information out and use it.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
Even if they don't want to use it, it's out there somewhere and
Right.
it can be brought out against them.
Right.
And bullies are out there, the wrong people
Right.
are out there. My stories, along with what they learn at school, we've had, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you guys are aware, things happen with teenagers and schools,
Right.
communicate that information. A
Mm-hmm.
couple things happen in terms of mental health with teenagers at our school
Mm-hmm.
who were bullied on cyberspace. So they had that concept, and me reinforcing that don't put anything out there that can be
Mm-hmm.
used against it. That's
Right.
that's the big thing. Keep repeating it till it sticks to their heads,
Right. Sure.
because as they are growing older, they don't, things slide off them. You tell them once and
Right.
they still go ahead and do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So repeat yourself
Right.
until they absorb it and they understand why you're doing or saying what you're doing and saying.
Right.
Um,
Good
that's
point.
that's what, repetition and reinforcement. I would
Right.
say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Those are very good points. And while we are talking about that, can you tell me a little more about how you ensure that they are in, independent, but not too much independent? You know what I mean? Like, uh, you don't want them to be making all kind of decisions and everything. I'm guessing, like with this conversation going on, I'm guessing that you obviously have some inputs on that, right? Because it seems like you have seen a lot of it. So, Deepika, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I guess the question here becomes that as a parent, what is the right balance of independence and codependence for you as
Right.
an adult, right?
Mhm.
How far do you want to go? You're
Right.
already giving them the independence by allowing them to dress themselves or use the social media or
Sure.
give them the trust, So that is independence in itself,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. Where do you want them to consider to ask for permissions?
Right.
For, for me, those big things were when the time when they have to be back home. And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't start until later in high school when they want to go to the malls, hang out with
Right.
friends. Up until middle school, they are still very dependent on your drive.
Sure. Right.
So it's easier
Mm-hmm.
to kind of contain that kind of behavior at that point. Um, at the same time, we have to probably understand that giving them independence is actually preparing them for the real world. They
Right.
will make mistakes,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
when you let them go. and they'll have to accept that they made mistakes. So my talk, when I talk to myself and prepare myself for parenthood and as they are growing up, my talk was, where do I draw the line? And
Mm-hmm.
I drew the line at their safety. If whatever they are doing, if it's not going to affect their safety, then I
Mm-hmm.
let them do it. If for some reason I feel that, it's not going to be safe for them,
Right.
then I put my foot down. And by however I do it,
Right.
I'm going to make my rule and make them stick to it.
Sure.
Um, 2 days ago, Sunday, we had a big scene at my home. My daughter, 17-year-old, she wanted to go hang out at the mall with her friends.
Okay.
With all the coronavirus thing going on,
Mm-hmm.
I did not want her to go to King of Prussia, which is the biggest mall
Right.
in our area, was going to be very crowded, and she was going to try on prom dresses, not even buy. The girls were just hanging out, going into stores and trying out dresses, which to me as a mom was the mix of bad ideas, because you're going in a crowded mall and you're going to touch things that have been touched by other people
Right.
in a location that is very close to where we have just had cases of coronavirus.
Right. Okay.
She wouldn't listen to it. The friends are hanging out, she wants to go. So that was a situation where we actually had to exert our parental rights
Sure.
and put our foot down and say, this is not happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Other situations, if it was another day, probably, and one parent has to be a good cop versus bad cop.
Sure.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
usually, if I'm freaking out, my husband comes in and he's like, it's okay, she can go, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. So I would say have a balance with your spouse as
Right.
well.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
when you're deciding, and both of you have to be on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
you and your husband. It shouldn't be that kids are smart, they can play tactics like that, especially at that age.
Right.
Mom said so you can't stop me from doing something.
Right.
um, Align your parenting styles before you head in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
would be my other thing there.
Right. Right. Very good point. Debbie, do you want to add something to that?
Um, this is where I totally go with Deepika, where it's safety,
Mm-hmm.
I put down my foot. Otherwise, I do keep pushing her to try different things, or if she wants to try different things. Like I basically um, put emphasis on life-saving skills. Like I taught her swimming and cycling and cooking and basic stitching, stuff like that, so that she is not dependent
Mm-hmm.
when I'm not here.
Right.
Yeah, otherwise I try to do stuff for her still.
Yeah, I think that with the oldest, I get to do more stuff too. But yeah, I think you
Yeah.
guys would agree, right? With the first one, you get to do stuff for them and then learn from there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. Good, good. One more thing that, it's mostly in the Indian community, I've seen that people compare their kids, especially when it comes to education, right? And everything that, okay, especially the younger ones are impacted, I guess. So if the older one did something awesome in education or even sports, right? So you're like, okay, your sister or your brother is awesome, right? Or why can't you be like that? So now we have grown, while growing up, when we were growing up, this was more prominent, I guess. But now we have, I think, with changing styles of motherhood, this has changed a lot. But still, in the Indian motherhood community, this is quite common. And moms right now, they're trying to make sure that they don't do it, right? So, do you guys have any suggestions or any tips on how not to do that? Because moms are really trying, and but what they can't do all the time is they can't stop comparing. So they are trying hard and they are asking for tips on how not to do that. Any suggestions, Devi?
This is kind of something I do. I admit I do because it's not to make her like look less than anybody else, like kind of setting a parameter for her. Like I do not compare like she did that, why can't you do that? Like not like that, but maybe put emphasis on something good on it, and just to motivate her
You
to
can
do
look up
better
to.
on
Okay.
that side of her.
Right.
Um, like she plays piano for a long time,
Okay.
but at some point she lost interest
Mm-hmm.
and she kind of was ready to let it go. But she's a really good player.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did is I took her to some performances
Right.
so that she can see what is the like after scenario kind of thing that you
Right.
can get into, and that kind of change her perspective on that.
Right. So that's the
Yeah,
push, like that sometimes is needed so they don't understand everything, right? We just want them to be, to see the world or see, just like you said, like what would the next after scenario be. So just give
right,
her a perspective of that, right?
right. And doing that, I have to discuss like what a level of practice they have to do in order to reach that point, and that kind of ended up in comparing and like
Uh-huh.
excuse me, I'm sorry. But sometimes I have to do that, I admit, to keep pushing her.
Sure. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
needed, right? Yeah. Deepika, do you have anything you want to add from your experience?
Like you said, we were all compared growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the parenting style back when, especially in India.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say for some reason I did not fall into the bad bandwagon. Thankfully, I have been able to stay away from comparing my kids to the other kids, and I would give credit to one of something I learned in a management class very early on in my career. Um, and that advice was set expectations, but do not set them so high that they become unachievable.
Right.
So, you know, like with my kids, they know that I want a B plus or a higher. I know they are straight A students, but I tell them a B plus because sometimes a B plus happens. So
Mm-hmm.
they shouldn't be nervous about failing in my eyes or in anybody else's eyes.
Right.
As far as comparing sibling goes, again from the same class, management class, I learned focus on your employees' strengths, not the
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses.
Right.
So you have two employees, one can do better at maybe testing, the other one is better at statistics. If you
Right.
keep trying to improve the statistician to do better at science,
Right.
that's not going to happen. Your team's going
Mm-hmm.
to fail. You
Sure.
know, so give them roles that are equivalent. It's the same with siblings. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they are siblings, but your one child's strength may be piano, like Devi said, and the other child's strength may be reading.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't force piano on the kid who
Sure.
enjoys reading more than the piano. And
Right.
as a parent, once you've identified your children's strengths and weaknesses, focus on the strengths. You
Mm-hmm.
know, don't tell them to get better at something that they are not good at or they
Right.
obviously don't enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not going to take them very far. It'll just
Yeah.
lead to frustration and a feeling of inadequacy, which
Right.
is
Right.
something that you want to avoid at all cost.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good point. So before I let you guys go, one question I have is, and I know Deepika, we talked about this. Let's talk about the challenges, right? There are a lot of challenges. You can pick your top three or top two, whatever you want to talk about. But there have you are raising your kids different from what you have seen growing up, and also in a different country, different culture. So let's talk about the challenges for raising kids in this kind of environment, which is different, and probably your first time doing this. So right.
Absolutely. My biggest challenge was to give them an identity. It's not easy being a child of a first generation immigrant
Sure.
because we are still stuck in the India that we left behind. Our values come from there,
Hmm.
and this country expects something else. It throws something else at our children. um, very early on, I found I'm not a very religious person. We speak a mixed Hindi English at home, so there's no pure language that I could that my kids could experience. I'm not very traditional, so the holidays, if they fell on a weekday, would just go unattended. So I kind of found that my kids were not developing an identity of their own. They considered themselves to be American, but because we are in a very non-diverse community, they did not see any Americans that had their physical characteristics, and that was leading to a lot of confusion amongst them. And I saw that with both the girls. Um, so, which is when I decided that I have to give them some identity outside of their being American. They are Indian American, and nothing's gonna change that from them. Um, my steps for them was they're gonna learn Hindi, whether they like it or not. They're at least gonna be conversational in the language that is ours. I started observing the holidays because we don't do Christmas in the traditional sense of it. So I started doing Holi and Diwali so that at least they know that we have equivalent holidays to Christmas and Thanksgiving. They just fall at a different time. And lastly was they will develop something in themselves that links them back to India. And I chose an Indian classical dance form, um, which was a good book. I mean, all of them turned out to be good choices for me because when we started those classes, they saw other brown skinned kids, not to be racial or otherwise, but they realized that they're not alone with those physical attributes in this country. And that was really helpful in their assimilation. Um, and I would say, you know, both my girls are pretty comfortable with the idea of being American and yet being Indian and identifying their diversity and embracing it as well. I can't hear you, Sandy.
Sandy can't hear you at all. No, you're off.
I can't hear you.
Are you telling me to tell something?
She doesn't know what happened, so maybe if you want to add to that.
She went still. I
No.
can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay. What did she say?
Do you want to add something to that?
Oh, okay. Um, so the cultural thing is tough. I will say that from my standpoint, it's because I am not aware of these holidays here. Like, why do they? What is Hanukkah? And there are a lot of things. Thanksgiving, and then they eat turkey. These are like really conflicting because I do not know the background of those things. I came from a completely different country and completely
Right.
different culture, so um, I could not put my perspective on them. Um, but my kids know all kinds of like we have a Bengali association here. Um, from our culture, we go there, mix with people. We do
Mhm.
celebrate all kinds of Bengali cultural stuff. So They are pretty aware of it. They speak my mother tongue very fluently. They can read and write. So, kind of, they are getting up in a kind of mixed way,
Hmm.
and I think we are all okay with that.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Well, those were very good points, though we had some technical difficulties. Sorry about that. Something happened. But before I let you go, is there, if there is one advice you want to give out to moms, what would that be, Devi?
For me, I will say, apart from everything, prepare them for a time when we are not with them. That should be the main focus of parenting.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Deepika, how about you?
I would tell moms to not be too hard on themselves. You're doing a very good job raising your kids. Bring them up to be good human beings. They
Right.
didn't come with instructions, so
Sure.
you are learning to be a mom as they are growing up.
All right.
So don't beat yourself up. Whatever you're doing, it's all good. Relax, take a deep breath, carry on. That's all.
Right. Yeah. That was awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. I really enjoyed all the discussions and yeah, hearing from you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No,
Thank
thank
you.
you too.
Thank you,
Okay, bye
Sandy.
bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye
Have
bye.
a good
Have a good
night.
You too. Bye.